opening your heart while you are sharing your poems when you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 10 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Burgio, and I'm here with co host Phil Burgio. Phil, welcome.
Thank you.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and to invite you to do the same. This episode is a special episode that has been on our minds since episode 2 with guest Chris Burns. We're calling this our Haiku Special. In this episode, we'll be talking a little bit about the haiku's history and form, as well as sharing some haiku. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is a collection of our previous guests who have submitted recordings of their original haiku and some thoughts about the form. First, a few things about the haiku. For those who might not be familiar with this form of poetry, it's a simple form of poetry. I believe it gets its inspiration from Chinese poetry, but it's of Japanese origin. It's a simplistic poem, typically following a few basic guidelines in its traditional form today. It has 3 lines, has 5 syllables in the first and third lines, and has 7 syllables in the second line, so a 5-7-5 pattern. Haiku doesn't rhyme. It includes what the Japanese call a kirigi, or a cutting word. We don't really have an English equivalent for that, so a lot of times you'll see authors use onomatopoeia or some other exclamation point or something for a break. It also includes what they call a higo, which is a seasonal reference. So typically, haiku are about nature or a specific scene and have to do with a specific season. But of course, like all forms of poetry, you'll see some variance with that. Things grow and develop, and nowadays in modern poetry, not everyone sticks to the form. Even back in its founding, some of the originators of the form didn't follow the specific guidelines of 5-7-5 and whatnot. And you'll see some of those variances with our guests as they share their poetry. But from here, I'm going to turn it over to Phil to share a little more about the haiku and a classic poem for the episode. Phil?
Right. The word haiku or the name haiku was supposedly given by Masaoka Shiki. He was born October 14th, 1867. He died September 19th, 1902. He was one of the 4 haiku masters, including Matsuo Basho, Yosa Busan, and Kobayashi Isa. One side note about Masaoka Shika, he went by a pen name of Masaoka Noburu. Yeah, Noburu means to rise. I want to apologize to any of my Japanese speaking listeners. I'm trying. Another thing about Shiki is when he was a teenager, he played baseball. And in 2002, he was inducted into the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame. One of his 19th century poems, he wrote, other than haiku, he wrote poems and prose too. One of his 19th century poems, he does mention baseball. Okay, and here's a poem by him: Fluttering, floating in the breeze, a single butterfly. Now you notice that's not our 5-7-5, but in the Japanese version, it does. We have a recording of what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, we'll try to include that here. It's from Google Translate.
ひらひらと風に流れて蝶一つ
All right, from that, we're going to move on to my portion of the haiku episode. The first one I like to share is actually a collaborative haiku that I wrote. One of the first collaborative poems I ever wrote. Wrote it with my father, Phil Burgio, just sitting out on the deck enjoying the morning, hearing a mourning dove in the distance, and we just sort of started passing words and lines and ideas back and forth, and we came up with this haiku. Mourning dove. The morning dove calls with peace and tranquility, serenity's song. Matthew and Phil Burgio. And the next one I'm going to share also has to do with birds. This one's sitting on the front porch in the morning, having my coffee, relaxing, doing a little poetry writing, and watching the birds in the yard. This one's called The Robin. Landing in a flutter, the early bird gets the worm. A swish, pluck, then gone. Matthew Burgio. And the final haiku I want to share for this episode is called Missed Beer. A lot of times when we're doing these recordings here at Zoraker Studios, I only have a small window before I have to leave and unfortunately get ready for work like most of us. And I was really disappointed after one of our episodes that I didn't get a chance to have a beer with my dad. And for me, having that beer or that glass of wine, it's not about having the drink. It's about that fellowship and spending that quality time with my dad. So that inspired this one. Missed Beer. The missed glass of beer. Woes the fellowship squandered. Cheers to the next pint. Matthew Burgio. So those are my haiku. Writing haiku growing up, you learn about it in school, and I didn't really give too much credence to the form throughout the years as I was writing poetry, although they do pop up occasionally in my earlier poems. It wasn't until recently when we were talking about this episode that I've been thinking about haiku a lot. And my dad and I have been talking about them back and forth. And he even challenged me to writing a haiku in less than a minute. And that was a fun one that I wrote called Timed Haiku that I won't share here. But it's been an interesting art form, and I find it addicting. It's fun, it's addicting. And I look forward to what our guests have to say about it. So from here, we're going to turn it back over to Phil to share some of his haiku for the episode.
Yep, Matt's right. It is kind of addicting. I've heard people say, well, it's hard for them to write haiku. For some reason, it just comes easy to me. I can just knock them out in a few seconds, few minutes. Here are my 3 haikus. The first one, mist on the river, shrouded veil on the water, cloaks the blue heron. That inspiration I got when we were canoeing on the Little Miami River. The other one, leaves dropping in fall, rustling branches drop color, illusion of rain. And the third one, watching the sunrise, deer wandering into view, glorious morning. Most of my haikus are nature related, a lot of bird related, but then I'll go off on write about, like Matt said, write about beer.
All right, thank you for sharing. As we move into the next section of our episode, we'd like to welcome back previous guests from You're the Poet. All right, guys, You're the Poet. Show us what you've got.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris Burns from episode 2, sharing thoughts on a haiku, inspiration, and a couple of my own. Thoughts on haikus, they are challenging in an interesting way. They're not a form that I prefer, yet a writer can still benefit from them. In the ways of meter, rhyme, internal rhyme, they help me become a better writer because of being cautious, making sure there's that right flow, that right energy, the right bounce. The first haiku today is dealing with nature. I love to just stare at the leaves, stare at the ground, and just watch the lovely process as it's going along. What I love about nature most is looking at the trees, watching limbs sway back and forth, the leaves fall to the ground, walking through parks and finding various rocks and seeing ledges. Sometimes things will change in nature with a footprint or over thousands of years. Tall trees tumbling, hillside eroding away, flat plateau ensues. Kind of a fun, bumbly one, very enjoyable to read. This other one is a little darker, yet it's a common thing which we experience sometimes. Shadow leers on bed, long smiles, eyes of deep red. Sleep paralysis. And there we have it. 2 poems. The second one took maybe about 5 minutes, and they also are a nice exercise. Like I said, a nice exercise to start your preferred writing style. It was nice to share these with everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye now.
Hello, this is Mars Robinson from episode 3, and I'll be reading my poem, Sinryu. At one point I could swear our rib bones were tangled, our bones made of dust, our livers aflame. You held me but would not touch my face, flawless then. I wonder if I have been following your lead ever since that night, hooking my sternum on your trailer hitch, letting my feet drag behind. The title of this poem, Sinryu, is a word that I struggle to say. It's spelled Senryu, and it is a form of poetry that looks very similar to haiku. It has 5 syllables on its first line, 7 syllables on its second, and then 5 again. So it looks just like a haiku in form, but the place where the 2 forms differ is in tone and subject. Haikus tend to have a natural focus traditionally, and you should be able to see some sign of the season that prompted the writing of the haiku in a traditional sense, although we have come to expand past that in what we colloquially know as a haiku, right? So a senryu may be something you're already a fan of, as they basically are poems that look like haikus but focus on human nature more. Another place where they changes in tone, which is where this poem is not the quintessential senryu. Most senryu have a more cynical or critical tone and tend to have more humor in them as well. So this one is a more calm, resigned kind of thing that feels like it's aligned a little more with haiku in the most loose of terms. So hopefully this prompts you to look up more about senryu, more about classic Japanese literature in general. It is a absolutely amazing, rich history that I'm so happy to have been exposed to.
Hello, this is Mark McDermott from episode 4. I started trying to write a daily poem last year to work through some life changes and challenges. After talking with Matt and Phil about haiku, I decided to try to write a few. Even though I'm not sure I entirely understand this particular form, I wrote 5 as sort of a haiku study last August 2023. I don't understand this haiku poetry style. It merits study. Maybe I should find poems and pieces I like which hold interest. Startling lights flash, thunderous booming sounds crash. Nature strikes, now ash. That one's called Lightning. Flourish, don't cower, petals spread out for a shower. Reach, tiny flower. That one's called Flower. As a bonus haiku for my uncle, I wrote this one this week, holding my newborn son and looking at my flourishing rosemary that I rooted from a friend's cutting. He may have some more context on what this means. Planted, wild or tame, both body and mind refreshed, smells good on the beard.
Brett Eldridge, Episode 5. You are my life's song. Your soul I will ever long. My life, world, my wife. Brett Eldridge, 8/14/24. My sons, I love you. Never will you know how much I would die for you. Brett Eldridge.
Hi, Phil. Hi, Matt. You know, these two haikus that I recorded for you are very personal. It's just something that's so simple, talking about my wife and my kids. But, I think that's what truly a haiku is. It's something deep and personal, and it's just quick. You get a feeling and you just have to roll with it. So that's what these two little quick haikus mean to me. Thanks for having me on again.
Bernie McDermott. I didn't realize how hard a haiku was until I was asked to do one. I have 2 I'd like to share with you for 2 different seasons. The first one, Snow Day. Snow blankets the ground. Jump with excitement and joy. School is closed today. Bernie McDermott. My second one is on a warmer side. It says, a warm summer's day. The sun hits my face, warming me as I sit down, my eyes close to rest. Bernie McDermott.
Hello, I'm Mary Coley from episode 7. I'm going to start off by reading my first haiku I ever written, called Ease. This haiku was inspired by old memories of my childhood. I would go outside and watch the snow fall. Everything covered a beautiful white, and the sparkling of the snow, the cold breeze, and silence in the air. It was where I found my peace. Ease. Chilling breeze whispers. Glistening snow gently falls. My heart is at ease. Another haiku I will be sharing is called Sunlit Moments. This haiku was inspired by the moment captured at a church park me and my husband always takes our kids to. Sunlit Moments. Sun shining from far. Laughter floats in the warm air. Fulfillment we share. I wanted to say that these two haikus were really fun to write. They are short, simple, and capture so much depth in just a few sentences and words. I wanted to thank you, Matt and Phil, for introducing me to haikus. It was a fun experience.
Hi, I'm KM Weldon from episode 8. I have 2 haikus for you. So it has been a challenge to write haikus. I never really realized how much I like them. It really forces you to be mindful with your words and, to really convey a message with a very simple setting. So it was very challenging, yet very fun. I have my first haiku today. It's called Timelines. From picking colors for the sheets on your mattress to sleeping alone. K.M. Weldon. That poem is, really just the timeline of a heartbreak. Those simple moments of mundane but cherished considerations to the tragedy of becoming a stranger to one another. I really wanted to kind of convey that with that poem. My next haiku is called La Boveda. It's the vault in Spanish. And this one is really about the heart and how it's a vault that gives out love as, a loan. It's not always paid back in full. So it's brave to give out something as valuable as our love. And it goes like this. See, love is a loan. It is risky and borrowed, but it's also brave. K.M. Weldon. This one really took a little bit of emotion with this one because when we give out our love, we expect it to be paid back, but it's not always paid back. It's very brave and risky to love someone. But yeah, that's all I have for you today.
Hi, I'm A. Benedict, and I have a original haiku. It's called The Harvest. Silent summer's end. Fall enters on a cool breeze. Severed stalks drop fast. It's the time of year out here. I live out in New Jersey, and the weather gets really nice during the fall. And this is that time of the season where the crops start to get cut, and whatever grows ends up dying. So that was the premise of the haiku that I wrote. I really like haiku. It's something that I have not delved into, but I think there's something to be said about the simplicity and the imagery from haiku that sometimes less is more. And that's what I really like about haiku. Writing this particular poem has kind of sparked my interest to write some more as well. I think a lot of haiku is based on nature, and that's one of the topics I always love to write about, and try to interweave in my writings.
Hello, this is episode 11 of You're the Poet, and my name is Simon Drake. I really enjoyed my spot as guest poet on You're the Poet podcast, presented by Matt and Phil. I had never heard of a haiku, so I had to investigate to find out what kind of a poem that was and how it was structured and what was involved. It took a couple of goes to piece together something that had the structure of the 5-syllable, 7-syllable, 5-syllable, and I wrote a piece called A Falcon, and I hope you enjoy. A falcon soars freely, high above white fluffy clouds, mind clear as the sky. By Simon Drake. It won't be my last. I'm sure I will write plenty more haikus in the future, and maybe you'll get to read one on this show.
Hi, this is Peter Rivers, episode 12. My haiku is the healing haiku to find my self-acceptance, expressing my pain. I wrote this haiku as a title for my haiku ebook. I'm a person that was born in a lot of personal trauma, and it carried out throughout my life. Writing and poetry was a seriously liberating thing for me. Learning to express your emotions from simply a self-preservation standpoint helped keep it from becoming toxic within myself, and it had such an amazing impact. What I'm looking to do with my ebook is to spread the ability to express, to find new poets or existing ones, and to help them to bring their emotions to their writing. Haiku can be an amazing, profound, compact expression, and that makes it perfect for disguising your truth within that structure. If you'd like to get a copy of my free ebook, email me, peterriverspoetry@gmail.com. Thank you.
As we wrap things up, thanks again to all of our prior guests who have made this show possible, and a huge thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in and spreading the word. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Please check out the website at you'rethepoet.com. There's a section there that answers questions about being a guest. Follow us on Facebook for updates and info, and send us an email to host@you'rethepoet.com for feedback or questions about the podcast and how to be our next guest. Until next time, Phil, thanks for joining us.
Anytime, Matthew. Happy to be part of this. Until next podcast.
All right. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.